This video is a tutorial for Keynote for the iPad. Keynote is Apple's equivalent of Microsoft PowerPoint. Now, if you've watched my previous video on Pages, what you will find is there are a lot of features, especially in terms of the user interface, that are similar and are carried over between the different apps. However, if you've not used Pages or Keynote before, this should provide you more or less with a complete overview of what you can do with this particular app. In the description below you will find a list of content, so if you want to skip to a particular part or you're looking for something quite specific, just have a look at the timings below and that will show you which part of the video to skip to. When you open up the Keynote app, you have two options. You can open up an existing document or you can start a new one. So we're going to start a new one and begin working with that. Now, it gives you many different templates to begin working with. Some are fairly plain and some are more elaborate. If you notice at the top also, you can choose an aspect ratio for the presentation itself. You have two options here. You can choose standard, which is a 4:3 presentation, which is sort of fairly squarish, or you can choose wide, which will give you a 16:9 widescreen presentation, and this really depends on the screen that you will be delivering your presentation from. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to choose a fairly plain template to begin with. Just like all of the apps we see from Apple, it focuses on simplicity. So whereas with Microsoft PowerPoint for the iPad we'll see lots of tabs along the top which has all these different buttons underneath to help us achieve different things, with Keynote it tends to be sort of hidden away. It doesn't mean it's any less powerful, however, as we're about to find out. So let's take a look at some of the basic setup options that we have for our Keynote documents. In the top right corner we have three dots, and if we tap on that we have lots of different options, most of which we're going to come to towards the end of the video. But if we have a look about 3/4 of the way down, we have one called Document Setup, and when we tap on that we have a few options. This links to the options that we actually had at the very beginning when we're choosing a template. So even if you choose a template and you change your mind, that can easily be rectified on this screen. So I can just choose a different template even after I've begun editing my PowerPoint together. At the bottom I can choose between themes and I can choose a slide size, which also gives us a few other options including 3:4, square and a custom size for your templates. I'm going to switch back to 4:3. I'm still going to stick with my plain white presentation just for now. If we have a look at the top left corner, we can see the word presentations, and if we tap that, that takes us out of this document and back to selecting any of our previous documents that we've worked with in Keynote. Next to that we have a square with broken up into three sections. If we tap on that, that gives us our view options. Unlike Pages, it's a little bit simpler here. We can choose between slide view, which is what we're on now, and a light table, which would give us an overview if we were dealing with a presentation with many different slides, which can be useful if you want to navigate between slides quite quickly. We can also choose to show presenter notes. So if you want to add notes for each slide to help you deliver a presentation, you can have those visible and edit them here. So to enter in text, it's very simple. The instructions are actually on the screen already. We can double tap on a text box and begin typing. If you don't have a physical keyboard with your iPad, we can double tap and it'll bring on the on-screen keyboard. If we tap on any item that's on our presentation, we can see a context menu that appears. This gives us a few different options. For example, we can cut, copy and paste, we can delete, we can add a comment, which is useful if we're working on a particular presentation collaboratively. We can also turn it into a clickable hyperlink, and finally we can animate particular parts of the presentation. So let's see how that works. I'm just going to tap on animate, we can tap OK for this, and then we can choose an animation for when it appears, when an item appears, and then when it disappears. So let's choose one to build in. So we can tap on any one of these, and then we can actually just press the play button in the top left of this menu, and it will give us a preview of what that would look like. So let's find one that looks good. Yep, we like that one. So in the top right we have a play button, and this will give us an idea of what this now will look like in the whole presentation. At the moment my title isn't visible. If I tap on the screen to progress through the slideshow, the animation will appear. Now I can also set an animation for the exit of this particular item, the build out. So if I click the plus sign for this, I can choose a different one. If I press play, it will give me a preview. Let's go with that one. So now, if I press the play button in the top right corner, I tap once to make it appear, and I can tap again to make it disappear. And you can animate any of your elements on the presentation using this method. You can also have an animation for a complete slide. If you'll notice in the top left, I can see a thumbnail of my slide, and then next to it is a menu. It currently says none because there isn't a transition for this. If I tap the plus icon, I can add an animation for the entire menu when I switch to it. So let's choose that one, let's see what that looks like. Yep, we'll go with that one. So now I've selected that, I can just tap away. If I press the play button now, we can see when it switches to the next slide, that is the animation that it will use. Now if you feel like we've made a mistake at any point, we can use the undo button. This is found next to the view options in the top left corner. I can tap it once and it'll undo any change that I've made. If I want to redo, I can tap and hold to redo the previous step. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts. This would be Command and Z to undo, Command Shift and Z to redo. For newer devices, you can actually shake it to undo as well. This works with newer iPads and iPhones. If we move our eyes to the top right of the screen, we can see a paintbrush icon. This is the edit menu. This menu will change based on what we have selected. At the moment, nothing is selected, so if I tap it, it will give me options for the entire slide that we are currently viewing. The first option allows us to change the layout of the slide. The options it will give you here are based on the theme that you have chosen earlier on. I can choose, for example, to have photos at the side, bullet points, quotes, etc. I'm going to just take it back to title and subtitle. I can also use this to adjust the background. I can actually change the background colour of the slide itself. I can add a gradient, or I can use this to choose an image. If I decide to choose an image, I can keep it at its original size. I can have it stretched to fit. I can have a tile, a scale, or I have additional features like adding a colour overlay to the top and changing the opacity of the tint that it gives. Here I also have the ability to hide different elements that are currently on this template. For example, I can turn off the title or the body. I can also add a slide number which will appear towards the bottom of each slide. The last option here is to edit the master slide. This is really useful if you're choosing a template but want to edit it and not have to change it for every single slide. If I tap on this icon, then select OK, I can have a look at all of the different templates that are available under this theme. I can edit each one of the master templates. Therefore, if I decide to use that particular template again, I won't have to edit it in the same way each time. This can be really good for improving the speed of your workflow. Now if I select the text that's on my slide and then tap the edit icon, you can see I've been given a whole new set of options. Under Style, I can choose the background colour of the text box. I can choose to add a border, a shadow, a reflection, and change the opacity of the text itself. Towards the top, I can move along to the next tab for text. Here I can change the paragraph style. Just like in Pages, these can be edited or rearranged depending on which ones you're going to use most often. I can also change the typeface, and have further options like underlining or strike through. If I tap on the three dots, you can also see I have the options to capitalise my text too. Below that, I can change the colour of the text, I can adjust the alignment, I can add bulleted lists if I choose. I can also change the line spacing if I'm dealing with a paragraph of text. Text can also be arranged into columns, and I can also adjust the margins between the text and the edge of the text box. Any adjustments I make to the paragraph style can also be updated and saved, so I don't have to keep redoing this. If you notice, now I've made some changes at the top where it says paragraph style, I can choose update. This means I can choose the same paragraph title in other slides without having to re-edit or re-stylize the text each time. The final tab is for arranging items. This applies to text, images, graphs or charts or any other items that I'm adding to each slide. If I have different objects on each slide overlapping, I can choose which ones are on top and which ones sit behind. At the bottom, I can also lock into place different items to make sure these aren't accidentally edited afterwards. If I want to add a new slide, I can move my eyes to the bottom left of the screen where I can see a plus icon. When I tap this, it gives me the option to choose from a different template as part of the theme. Once again, I can double tap to edit my text. Now if we have a look at the top right of the screen again, we can see a plus icon. If I tap this, I can see many different options of things that I can add to my Keynote slides. The first tab gives me the option of adding a table. I can swipe through many different presets to find one that I like. However, I can adjust these afterwards based on my own tastes. I'm going to choose this one here. Just like in Pages, I can really simply edit this table. First of all, it's given me a set number of rows and columns, and these can be adjusted. If I want to add more columns, we can see in the top right of the table there's a circle with two vertical lines. If I tap on that, I can choose how many columns I have in the table. The same applies to rows. If I tap to select the table and move my eyes to the bottom left of it, I can see a circle with two horizontal lines. And from there, I can adjust the number of rows I have. The table can also easily be resized. Once selected, you'll see some blue dots around the bottom right edge. From there, I can tap, hold and drag to resize the table based on my needs. To enter in information, I can double tap on a cell and begin entering it. Once more, I'm going to tap to select the table, and then if I tap the paintbrush icon in the top right corner, I can see that the edit menu gives me some options to customize this table. In the first tab, I can change the look of the table itself. Underneath, I have the option of specifying how many header rows or columns or footer rows that I want. I can choose whether or not I have a table name, whether the table has an outline, or if I want alternating rows. If I'm dealing with a large table with lots of data, alternating rows can help make it quite readable. I can also change how the grid looks on the table itself, whether I want to show or hide the horizontal lines, the column lines, the vertical lines, or the header row lines. I can also change the typeface of the table itself and increase or decrease the font size. Over in the next tab we have Cell. Here I can change the look of individual cells inside the table. For example, let's change what month looks like. I've selected that cell. I can go to the Edit menu, then choose Cell, and then make decisions about how this looks. If I'm dealing with a large amount of information inside a cell, I can choose to wrap text, meaning that it will automatically go to the next line when I've reached the end of the cell width. I can also change the border style. And finally, I can add conditional highlighting. This is incredibly useful to highlight particular bits of data automatically based on rules that you specify. To do this, I'm going to select the two items under the sales column. Now if I go back, I can add conditional highlighting. What this will do is change the colour of the cell based on the information that's inside it. For example, if I choose less than and specify that any amount that is less than 350 will be filled in red, you'll notice that the 300 cell has now been highlighted. I can now add an additional rule. Let's say any number greater than or equal to 400 will be highlighted in green. Having conditional highlighting can help make the data you present more readable. It can also save you time and prevent you having to change the colour of each cell individually. What I can then do, if I have different rules in different cells, is combine them if I want to share them across the entire table. I also have the option to clear them all completely. Next, if I go to the Format tab, I can actually change the type of information that's displayed in the cell. Let's select the two numbers under Sales. If I want to, I can turn it into a percentage or a currency, and using the I button I can change what currency that is. Finally, I can arrange the objects just like I can with text or images. I've now created a new slide so I can add some additional objects. If I tap the plus icon again, I can now move over to charts and graphs. Just like in the Pages app, these are incredibly powerful. From here I can choose 2D or 3D charts, or interactive charts, which I'll come to in just a moment. I'm going to choose the first one here. Now it's automatically put in a graph for me, but it's not the graph that I actually want. I need to edit the data. With the graph selected, I can see a context menu appear, and now I can choose Edit Data. From here, I can edit any of the data I wish to get it to reflect what I want to present. The data is automatically adjusted accordingly. Now with the graph selected, I can now go back to the Edit menu, which is the paintbrush icon, and I'm given a whole new set of options. I can change the colour scheme. I can turn on or off the chart title and adjust its alignment. I can display a legend which tells you which colour represents what. I can add a border. I can change the typeface or the size. I can choose whether or not I want value labels displayed on each column. I can choose to have rounded corners, and if so, by how much. If I choose to have rounded corners, I can have them on the outside corners only. And finally, I can change the chart type. There are many different options to choose from. If I change tab at the top, you can also see I can make adjustments to the X or Y axis. I can choose whether I turn on the category labels or the series names. I can choose the alignment of each label. I can choose to display the grid lines or have tick marks to help separate the data. I can also have an axis name. Under the Y-axis, I can choose to have value labels. I can change the number format. I can also add a reference line. This can display things like the average or the median. I can also show the minor grid lines in the data, or show some tick marks to help separate the data I've got. Again, I can choose whether or not I have an axis name. And finally, just like all other objects, I can choose their arrangement on the slide. If I go back to the plus icon, I can now choose interactive charts. This allows me to show different sets of data without having to have several different charts. Let's choose the first one. You'll notice there's now a slider at the bottom. By dragging this, I can actually show the several different charts in one slide. I'm going to go back to the plus menu one more time and look at the next option. This allows me to choose different shapes, quite similar to clip art. I can choose any shape I want. I can enlarge it and move it around on the screen. If I tap on the edit icon with this selected, again I'm given some different options. I can change the fill, add a border, add a shadow, add a reflection, or change the opacity. I'm going to go back now to the plus icon and choose the last option. This allows me to add a photo or a video, to take a picture using a camera, to record audio, or to insert an image gallery. I can also do drawings. This works very similarly to the Notes app on iPad. I've now added an image from my gallery. Just like with the shapes, I can tap and resize it and move it around on my screen. Back on the edit menu at the top, I'm given several different presets that I can use. I can also add a shadow, a reflection, or change the opacity. On the image tab, I'm given some different options. Edit mask allows me to make a crop to the image. Now I have a few slides on my Keynote. Let's have a look at some of the options I now have. Let's look at the left hand column. This gives me an overview of all the slides I currently have. If I tap and hold on a slide, I can actually rearrange it in the presentation. I can have it earlier, or I can make it a sub-slide under a different section of the PowerPoint. This allows me to show or hide a particular section. By tapping once on a slide, it brings up a context menu, allowing me to cut, copy and paste, to select everything on the slide, to delete it, to skip it, or add a transition. Let's now take a look at the More menu. This is something we looked at earlier when setting up the document. This is the three dots in the top right hand corner of the screen. The first option allows me to collaborate with others. If I want to work on a document and avoid sending it backwards and forwards by email, I can invite other people to work on it. To do this, I would need to enter in the email address or Apple ID of the person I'd like to collaborate with. The next option I have is Share. I can use this to share the document over AirDrop, or send it to another app, or via email or iMessage. I then have Export options. Here I can export it as a PDF, a Microsoft PowerPoint file, a movie, or a series of images. If you have a compatible printer, you can print this wirelessly with AirPrint. Keynote Live allows me to make a presentation and share it online live across the world. It will generate a hyperlink to share with others, allowing to click through and watch your presentation as it happens. I also have Find. Just like in Pages, I can type in a particular word and it will find any references to that word on my slide. By tapping on the settings wheel, I can see that I can make use of Find and Replace. Transitions and builds is another way of getting to the point where you can add animations to all of your slides. You have the option of rehearsing your slideshow and using a wireless remote to change slides. You can also add a soundtrack from your audio library to play as you present it. Below that, you can password protect your document. And finally, towards the bottom, we have Settings. This allows me to make changes to the autocorrection, to add slide numbers or comments if I'm working collaboratively, to change the author name of the document, or to make changes to how the presentation is presented. For example, I can have the presentation be on a loop, and I can have it self-playing, specifying the number of seconds I have for each slide. To play through my presentation, I can tap on the play icon, which is found towards the top right of the screen. To change slides, I can use the arrow key on my keyboard or tap the screen. If I swipe from left to right, I can go backwards a slide, or if I swipe from right to left, I can go forwards. If I tap and hold on a slide, I can now annotate. This means while presenting, I'm able to use my Apple Pencil to highlight particular parts of the presentation. So that's it from my tutorial on using Keynote for the iPad. If you found this video useful, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be back soon with some more iPad tutorials.